Today we are looking at Bulma CSS, which is a well-known framework, and it's pretty close to Bootstrap CSS and others. But the special here is that it focuses on Flexbox and it's kind of modular. So I will give you a crash course how you can use it, what class it has, and how it looks like. Also, I want to mention with those all get started videos, I'm not preferring any CSS framework here. I just want to give you an overview about those frameworks and which suits you the best maybe. Also, if you want me to dive deeper into Bulma, then let me know in the comments below and I will do other videos on doing a deeper dive into Bulma. So with no further ado, let's jump in. Alright, so at bulma.io you will find the homepage of the framework, and yeah, as you can see, it's not even in the major version, so it's pretty new, and it states that it's a modern CSS framework that just works. We will dive into that if that's actually true. As you can see, 100% responsive, modular, and modern since it's built with Flexbox. If we scroll down, of course, some sponsors, and here's the first thing which kind of supports the message up here that it's easy and just works. So for example, the grid, as you might know from other frameworks, they always you have to tell the grid how many columns it should have and so on. And with Bulma, that's not the case. You just define columns, and then you just define the columns you want to have, and they resize automatically. Yeah, so that's actually more easier than most of the frameworks which are out there. Then you also get some buttons. This is kind of the same as in Bootstrap or other frameworks. You always have the general button class, and then you define some is primary, is large. Yeah, some modifiers at the end. And what else do we have here? Yeah, some input fields, just some showing off how it looks like. Nothing special. Then of course, very important, no JavaScript required, so it's a plain CSS framework only, which I personally like because Bootstrap and other frameworks always require you to have JS, which keeps maybe the CSS files a little bit smaller, but you have to pull in those extra resources, which slows down the page load of your website. So that's pretty cool. And then of course they show off some examples, what you can build with Bulma. So let's go into the documentation and see how you can install Bulma. So overview, and we click on start. So there are basically different ways how you can use Bulma. So with Skeleton, which we take a look last week, we knew that it's just a CSS file which you have to implement into your website. There were no CDNs and no installments required. So if you have missed that one, you can watch it up here. But yeah, with Bulma it's different, so you can actually pull it from a CDN, or you do the installment with NPM or Yarn. And yeah, so I would start to show you more the framework and less the installment. I would start with the CDN delivery and just use that starter template here. As said, if you want me to do other videos and do a deep dive into those things, like for example how you install it with NPM and so on, let me know in the comments below. So I will quickly create a project, which I already did, and we create an index file here, index HTML, and then we just paste in the Bulma starter template. And let's actually see if it's already working. I have no idea, I never used Bulma, so that's also the first time for me. So I'm opening that with the live server, and it does. So we have a styled H1, and we already have our hello world example. We can take a look at the resource, how heavy this Bulma CSS is. Also maybe quick, nice use case. I am not sure if you know that, but if you take a long left click on your reload button in Chrome, you just get some more options, so you can empty cache and hard reload. And then we know, all right, Bulma min CSS is 25 kilobytes, which is not that bad. It's kind of in the, I would say, in the middle field of those CSS frameworks. If you consider you don't have to pull in JS, it's probably more lightweight than most of the CSS frameworks which do pull in JS as well. All right, so let's then take a look at the CSS classes. All right, so the first thing is the container class, I guess, which we always need. And in Bulma, it's as with other CSS frameworks, except Tailwind, where the container class will limit your width of the screen, and all the content which is in the container will be limited to that width, and also it will center your content within that. And then you also have some extra classes here. So for example, if you just use the container class below 1023 pixels, it's full width. But you can also add like container is widescreen or is full HD or is max desktop. Then you actually can extend this full width option to bigger screens as well, which is kind of cool because like other frameworks doesn't offer that, at least not that obvious. So also supports that message that it's just simple and usable. And as we see, we already have that from the template, which is nice. All right, then let's maybe take a look on how we can add a button to our text here. We go in Elements, click on Button, and the documentation is really well on Bulma, so you get always the examples and the example code, how to create those, and also the explanations, which is pretty nice. And as you can see, Bulma has a lot of different button sizes and colors and styles, which is nice, but also probably not that nice, because in the end you want to focus, or you should focus on one button design, or maybe 2 or 3 depending on the actions. And having all those buttons in there in the CSS, it's file size you add, which you don't need in the end. So let's take a look afterwards if we can actually reduce that and test out this modular thing, if we can remove some of the classes, or if it's just you can remove all the buttons and that's it. Tailwind, for example, as you might know from my other video, which you can watch up there, is you can purge the CSS, which means Tailwind will go through your CSS and sees, for example, okay, you use the button is white, but not as light as dark and the others. So it would remove all those other classes from the CSS file in the end, and only ships the is white class with the button class. I'm not sure if Bulma can do something like that, but that's very powerful because you can reduce your file size, as in my case, from 200 kilobytes to I guess it was 18 kilobytes, which is very powerful. But yeah, let's take a look at the buttons first. And yeah, let's create, like in Skeleton, so that we have a comparison. One anchor button. So we need to add the button class here and some text. I'm an anchor. And for Skeleton, it was pretty easy because you just had to type button. I'm a button. And for the button class was automatically assigned, or yeah, the button styles. And for anchor links, you had to tell that it was a button. Let's see if it's for Bulma, it's the same. And it's not. Okay, so we have to apply the button class here, but for the button itself, it's not applied. So we have to add the button class here as well. You could argue now like it makes sense or it doesn't make sense to do that. If you insert a button element into your HTML, you probably want to have the button class on that. All right, and then so we have the button, which is like this very lightweight button, which basically is just white, not filled, nothing. So it's very neutral. So we can add some colors here. So we could say it's white, it's whatever. It's ghost, is white, doesn't have any background, or like a white background actually. Or you can just do it in the other way around and make it more readable, I would say. So is info is yellow, is warning danger, yeah, it's red or reddish. Yeah, and you can have this primary link and so on. Light versions, so I won't go into all those different sizes and styles. So let's add maybe this outline button, which is filled. So it's the third one. Button is link is outlined. Let's add that to the anchor link. Is link is outline. There we go. All right. So that's the first one, and maybe the second button one, because buttons normally trigger an action and an anchor link somewhere. So I personally like to distinguish those looks in the UI as well. So let's make that maybe somewhat rounded here. So let's take it to is primary as rounded. So it's very intuitive, I would say. Once you get this naming schema of Bulma, how they name their classes, then I guess it's rather easy and you can write it more or less from your top of the head. So as you can see, it's always is hovered, is focused, is active, is link, is info, is success. I guess it was also is wide, is small. So all those modifier classes starts with is and then what you want. So it's very, I guess, neutral to write. All right, so now we have our two buttons. I'm an anchor, I'm a button. And yeah, what else do we want to implement? Let's take a look. Maybe we also want to take a look at the titles and the fonts. So they also offer here a lot of customizations with the titles, which I really like. It's not, I hope it's not tied to the tags. So let's check that. And maybe add another div container. And here I'm adding an h2, some h2. Yeah, I really like that. So they don't style the h2 tag by default, because often I see on websites that people uses those h1, h2 tags for styling purposes, which you never should do because it's your HTML structure. And I really like that you can now have like, it's a title, but I want to have it, what was it, is one, I guess. Exactly, so I can have a h2 which is styled as an h1 easily without actually typing the h1 here. So I really like that because often people do the mistakes and go the easy way, I would say, to just have like the styling fitting, but your HTML structure in the background is not correct. Nice. Okay, subtitles are somewhat more lightweight. It's not bold, I guess. So you can also combine them, which is also neat. So the texts, let's maybe do a test here. So we have a paragraph and we say just like, hello, this is some normal paragraph. And as you can see, the H1 or the H2 and the paragraph has now here like some margin in between. What we can do now here is we just repeat that now. So same thing, take a look, save, take a look. So this is how it currently looks like. So 2 times the same thing. But if I add here the class subtitle, then this becomes a subtitle. And as you know, maybe from subtitles, they are closer to the heading. And this is pretty cool because you can really, you don't have to do all those adjustments and everything by yourself. So it comes out of the box. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but like with Bootstrap and Foundation for Sites and other big frameworks, you get the subtitle styles and so on, and you could get some components which combine them. But as far as I know, if you just give 2 elements, those classes, without using the actual component which is provided by the framework, it won't work. Like, you have to do the margin reduction by yourself. And I really like that Bulma is doing that really out of the box, and you just can do it. And as you can see here, you can also just reverse that by just adding it is spaced. So if you don't want to have that, you can just add that. But now let's take an actual look on the modularity, how that will work with Bulma. And the modularity is as I thought. So you can add specific parts of the CSS. So everything you see here as an extra entry, you can add to the CSS or you can remove it. But this also means like the buttons we had a look at with all the different modifiers and colors and styles, they won't reduce. So you can include all buttons or like all button classes or none of them. And this is actually a bummer, I think, because if you build a website or an app, you never will use all of those button styles, at least like challenge me. But yeah, at least they provide something to have those modularity, but I think also big frameworks like Bootstrap are also offering that. In general, it's really nice to have something like that because you probably never need all of it, or you have stuff which is very customized and where you actually don't want to use what the framework is providing. And this brings me to my next point. Let's take the button example again. So I think they do a quite good job on the buttons. In general on the components you get, because they are very neutral designed at the beginning. So if you have the button class, you just get a button without any color, with just a very lightweight hover effect, very reduced. And I really like that, because if you have a design team or any designer, or if you have your own imagination how the website should look like or your app, you might want to customize or give it a personal look on those buttons. And if you have a framework where you add a button class and the button is already blue and whatever designed, you have to revert those changes or override them with your own CSS, which adds additional CSS. And I think this is solved very well with Bulma here, is because you get like this full-blown framework, but it's still, the components are, I would say, kind of shy. So they are very reduced, and you can add now your favorite color or your primary color from the design to it by yourself, and you don't have to override anything else. And at the same time, you get also the other classes utility classes to change the designs. Like, I don't know, if the design says you have to have those rounded borders, you can add the class. So it's very utility-like, but it's also very, so it mixes kind of Tailwind with like Bootstrap, I would say. At least that's my first impression, where Tailwind is like this very, you don't get anything, we don't style anything. you get just a plain HTML and you can use your utility classes. I showed Tailwind if you're interested in that. And then we have Bootstrap on the other side and Foundation for Sites, where you just add a button class and you get a button. And if you don't like it, you have to override it. So yeah, that's my first impression of Bulma CSS. I think it has a lot of potential. It's a very good mix of different approaches, and I think it does a lot of things very well. With the modularity, I think it could improve. I really like this Tailwind approach where it just scans the code with the purge CSS and just removes everything which you don't need. But I really like that it comes without JavaScript and it's just plain CSS, and that it has like this approach of like, we give you some styling if you want to have it, but our initial classes, our main classes like button or other classes, are very lightweight. So if you don't want them or you don't need them, you can override it, or you can inject your own CSS and customize it the way you want. Also, it provides those extra utility classes to make buttons rounded or whatever. If you want to use Bulma, but you also have a very custom design in front of you, or your idea is very custom, I think Bulma is maybe not the right thing, because you would need to override all the default styles from Bulma. Except of course your styling goes into direction of the Bulma UI. Then of course you can use it, but otherwise you would override all the time the styles of Bulma, and it would add up a lot of CSS in addition. But if you are like, okay, I want to have a fast website, I want to customize it, but I'm fine if the button looks like a button as on most of the websites, then go ahead and create the landing page or your app with it. It's really, it looks really cool, and I will definitely try it out myself. And as said, if you're interested in me showing other stuff from Bulma, let me know what it should be. Also, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel if you don't want to miss the next video. Until then, you can watch maybe this video or maybe that video. And with that, have a nice day. Bye.